I have to adjust, you know, because up till now we've maybe been saying, hey, you know, this is how you swing, you know, and then all of a sudden you get a band that's so accomplished. You have to really adjust your radar as to how to give constructive comments. And the other thing is I'm a little short on time, so when I see a band that's really accomplished like this, I stop thinking about, oh, well, you know, articulation and stuff like that, and I start to think like, who would I hire? I would hire Sarah. I would hire that trombone section. I think that's the best non-college. I would hire your violin player. I can imagine that. Scholarship to Berkeley. I would hire the jazz band trumpet player. Having said those things, I just do want to give a few suggestions. You know, I'm like the lowest musician on the food chain. I'm a guitar player. So, a lot of times my comments go towards the rhythm section, and I think obviously the rest of the ensemble is everybody's in excellent hands. But there's a couple things I would say. One is that the rhythm section has to follow the dynamics of the band much more carefully, and because what I find is that the rhythm section is sort of flatlining a little bit, and the ensemble is sort of crescendoing and decrescendoing, and yet at the same time the rhythm section is sort of responds to those dynamics a little bit, but not as much as they should. So one thing that I would try to keep in mind with the rhythm section is when the ensemble goes up, you got to go up. When the ensemble comes down, you got to come down. Then the other thing I would say, and see the problem is when you're trying to make comments to a real sophisticated band, sometimes you've got to really go toward individuals. And I don't do that because it's mean.
They do it all day.
Yeah. I think one real big misconception with drummers is that following a drum chart, the figures that are being written in there are the figures that you're supposed to play. That's not really true. The figures that are written in there are the figures that the rest of the band is playing. So the idea is to set up those figures, not to necessarily play those figures. So, and I'm referring specifically to the first tune. Now, who was the drummer on the first tune? Okay. And I would actually work on this if I could, but I don't think I've ever heard a snare drum that loud. Yeah. What was happening is like because you were playing the punches exactly with the band, but they were so loud, you know, you're playing with your left hand on the snare drum. I think what you want to think of is setting up those figures, not necessarily playing those figures. So what I would have done if we had time to actually rehearse a little bit is, first of all, I would have rehearsed it without you playing any of those figures, just playing time. Then I would put the figures in at about 1/1,000,000th as loud as you're playing them right now, because you're hammering your left hand. It's got to come down. So the first thing I want to do is I want to bring that down, and then I'd say forget about those figures and set them up, you know, so that if the band's going to play ba da da, you don't play da da da. You set that figure up. So you play 1, 2, 1, 2, ba ba ba, and then you come up back onto the ride cymbal and play those figures, you know. So in other words, you set it up, but then you play the accents just as a color change, not as a big gigantic dynamic change. Because that way, the attention is drawn away from the band and it's drawn onto you. So the idea is it is tough too, because if somebody says, well, if they don't want me to play this stuff, why do they write it? I mean, the problem is people really don't know how to write drum charts that well. And all of a sudden you're working on it, you're going, well, if I see it, I should play it. I think you want to think, okay, if I'm looking at those figures, those are the figures that the band is playing. How do I complement those figures? How do I not necessarily play them, but more like set them up, you know what I mean? So it's a roadmap of what the rest of the band is doing, and your job is to set those figures up, not play those figures. But if you're going to play the figures, you got to control the left hand more. Okay. And then I'd say get a guitar player. Other than that, great job. Gotta run. I wish I could work some more with you guys.